Hey everybody, welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be doing something kind of different. We're going to be looking at a list of the top 10 people named Tom.
Okay.
And this is from the Top 10's website, so it's user-generated. Um, and we thought this would be interesting to kind of dive into and see what we can learn about fame and these different Toms and what makes them so popular.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at the top two entries right off the bat, it's pretty interesting. We've got Tom Hanks just blowing away the competition with 52% of the votes. And then in second place is Tom Cruise. I mean, he's got 3 Golden Globes, 3 Oscar nominations.
Yeah, he's one of the highest paid actors as well.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. I think that they're both obviously very famous and successful, but I think they represent kind of different sides of Tomness. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can see that.
You got Tom Hanks, who's like the everyman. He's America's dad.
Yeah.
He's just so likable and down to earth. And
Yeah.
and then you got Tom Cruise, who's like this intense action star. You know, he does all his own stunts, and he's just like larger than life. Yeah. And even the user comments reflect that. You know, like for Hanks, one of them just says, obviously, Tom Hanks is the greatest. You're like, no need to explain it.
Right.
And then for Cruise, there's one where the commenter was rewatching A Few Good Men, and they're like, the best.
Yeah.
Like, just so excited about it.
Yeah, and it's funny, too, because, like, A Few Good Men is such a classic Tom Cruise movie. It's got all the elements,
Yeah.
you know, the intensity, the drama, the action. It's a great movie.
Totally.
But yeah, it's interesting to see how, like, even within the name Tom, there's so much variety and so many different ways to be successful and famous.
Yeah, definitely. And as we go further down this list, I think we'll see even more examples of that.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we have Tom Kenny. Now, you might not recognize the name immediately,
Okay.
but he's a voice actor.
Huh.
And he's done like a ton of iconic characters.
Oh, really?
SpongeBob SquarePants,
Oh.
the Ice King from Adventure Time,
Yeah.
the Mayor from Powerpuff Girls,
Hmm.
even Rocco from Rocco's Modern Life.
Wow. It's amazing how, like, one person can have such a huge impact on, like, so many different shows and characters. You know, it's really impressive. And it's funny because, like, one of the comments on the list is like, yeah, this dude is literally SpongeBob. Hard to compete with that.
Yeah, I mean, like,
That's gotta be tough.
it really is. It's like, how do you top that? You know?
Right.
So, you know, we got the everyman, the action hero, the voice actor, and then there's also Tom Petty.
Oh, yeah. The musician.
Yeah, singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, record producer, like
Yeah, a legend.
a very, very successful career.
Yeah. But then right after him on the list is Tom Araya.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's a completely different kind of musician.
Yeah.
He's the bassist and vocalist for Slayer, which, if you're not familiar, is a thrash metal band.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see that, like, you know, the name Tom can be associated with such different genres of music, from like the classic rock of Tom Petty to the like heavy metal of Slayer.
Yeah, definitely. Shows you the range that this name has.
Yeah. And speaking of range, how can we forget about Tom Brady?
Oh, yeah, he just recently retired.
7 Super Bowl wins.
Yeah, that's pretty much unheard of for a quarterback.
It really is. And it's like, it's interesting to see how, like, he's kind of become this, like, cultural icon, you know? It's not just about football anymore. It's about, like, his dedication and his work ethic and his ability to, like, defy expectations.
Yeah, totally. He's
Yeah.
become like this symbol of like perseverance and achieving your goals.
Yeah, so I think we're already starting to see some interesting trends here, like how, like, certain fields like entertainment and sports tend to produce a lot of famous Toms.
Yeah, it's definitely making me think about like, what does this list tell us about like our values as a society? You know, like why are these particular Toms so famous and why are they at the top of the list?
Yeah, and I think as we go further down the list, we're going to see even more interesting examples and maybe start to answer some of those questions.
Definitely. I'm excited to see what else is in store.
Me too. Okay, so we've talked about some of the Toms at the top of the list, like the Hanks and the Cruises and the Kennys, but what about some of the other Toms on this list? You know, the ones who maybe aren't quite as famous that still have something interesting to offer.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, this list is full of surprises. And I think it's really those unexpected names that can give us some of the most interesting insights into what it means to be a Tom in the public eye. So, like, let's look at Tom Selleck, for example.
Okay, yeah. He's definitely got that iconic look. You know, the mustache, the Hawaiian shirts.
Exactly. He's instantly recognizable from his role as Thomas Magnum in Magnum P.I.
Yeah, such a classic show. It's funny because I actually haven't seen it, but I feel like I know everything about it just from, like, pop culture references and stuff.
Yeah, it's one of those shows that's really become part of our collective memory. Even if you haven't seen it, you probably have some sense of what it's about.
Right. And I think Selleck himself has kind of become like this symbol of like a certain era, like
Yeah,
that cool, laid back 80s vibe.
totally. And speaking of iconic roles, we can't forget about Tom Hiddleston.
Oh, yeah. He's huge now with the whole Marvel thing.
Right, he plays Loki, and the fans love him. Like, there's a comment on the list that says, this should be first. He is amazing as Loki and as himself. He is the best.
Wow, that's some serious dedication.
Yeah. It's clear that he's really struck a chord with audiences. And it's interesting how he's managed to take a character who's essentially a villain and make him so likable.
Right. It's like he's found a way to make Loki both menacing and charming at the same time.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance, but he
Yeah.
pulls it off brilliantly.
And then there's Tom Baker, who played the Doctor in Doctor Who.
Ah, yes, a classic Doctor.
Yeah, he actually holds the record for the longest run as the Doctor from 1974 to 1981.
Wow, that's impressive.
It is. And it's interesting to see how like each Doctor brings their own unique style to the role. But Baker is definitely one of the most memorable.
Yeah, he had that sort of eccentric, quirky energy that really made the character his own.
Right. And speaking of eccentric, we can't forget about Tom Green.
Oh, Tom Green. Now, that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, he was like the king of cringe comedy back in the day.
Totally. His show, The Tom Green Show, was like a cultural phenomenon. It was so outrageous and unpredictable.
Yeah.
And he really pushed the boundaries of what was considered acceptable on television.
Yeah, and not everyone was a fan. But he definitely had a loyal following. And you got to admire his commitment to the bit,
Yeah.
Like, he really went all out with his pranks and stunts.
Oh, absolutely.
I
He wasn't afraid to make himself look ridiculous.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what made him so appealing to people.
Yeah.
He was so self-deprecating and willing to laugh at himself.
Yeah, and it's interesting how, like, his career kind of peaked in the early 2000s and then sort of faded away. But now with the rise of internet culture and, like, all these viral videos and stuff, it feels like he was kind of ahead of his time.
Yeah, though he was just born in the wrong era.
Yeah.
Like his style of humor would probably thrive on YouTube or TikTok these days.
Right. It's like he was the original influencer in a way. But yeah, it's interesting to see how like fame can be so fleeting. Like one minute you're on top of the world and the next minute you're kind of forgotten.
Yeah, it's a fickle business for sure.
Mm.
But I think Tom Green's legacy is secure.
Mm.
He definitely left his mark on comedy and pop culture.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of leaving a mark, let's talk about Tom Morello.
Oh, yeah. The guitarist from Rage Against the Machine and Audioslave.
Yeah, he's not just a phenomenal musician, but he's also like a really outspoken activist. He's always been very vocal about his political beliefs.
Yeah, he's definitely not afraid to use his platform to speak out against injustice.
Right.
And I think that's something to be admired.
Hmm.
He's using his fame for something bigger than himself.
Right. And it's interesting how like his music kind of reflects that, that's got this raw energy and this sense of urgency that really speaks to people who are feeling disenfranchised or marginalized.
Totally. It's music that makes you think and makes you want to take action.
Yeah. And it's a reminder that like art can be a powerful tool for social change.
Absolutely. It can inspire people to think differently, to question the status quo, and to fight for a better world.
Okay, so we've talked about the actor, the comedian, the musician, the activist. Now let's talk about the coach, Tom Landry.
Oh, yeah. The legendary coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, he's an icon in the world of football, known for his stoic demeanor, his signature fedora, and of course his incredible winning record.
Yeah, he coached the Cowboys for 29 seasons and led them to 5 Super Bowl appearances.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. And it's interesting how Landry's legacy extends beyond just his wins and losses. He's really seen as like a symbol of leadership and discipline and integrity.
Right, and it's funny because like he's so associated with that fedora. It's become like his trademark.
Yeah, it's like a visual representation of his whole persona.
Yeah.
You see that hat and you immediately think of Tom Landry and everything he represents.
And speaking of iconic figures in sports, we can't forget about Tom Brady.
Oh, yeah, the George.
7 Super Bowl wins. It's just mind-blowing.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it's not just the wins. It's his longevity. He played at the highest level for over 2 decades, which is practically unheard of in professional sports.
Right. And it's like he's become this symbol of like defying age and exceeding expectations.
Totally. He's like a walking inspiration for anyone who thinks they're too old to achieve their dreams.
Yeah. And it's interesting how like his story kind of transcends sports.
Yeah.
It's about dedication and hard work and never giving up on yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that resonates with people from all walks of life.
All right. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've talked about actors, comedians, musicians, activists, coaches and athletes. And I think we're starting to see a pattern emerge. Like a lot of these Toms are known for their talent, their charisma, their dedication, and their ability to inspire others.
Yeah, definitely. It's like there's something about the name Tom that just seems to attract these larger-than-life personalities.
But there's one more Tom we need to talk about before we wrap up this deep dive. And his story is a bit different from the others.
You're talking about Tom Searle, right? The guitarist from Architects.
Yeah, his story is really tragic. He passed away from skin cancer at the age of 28.
Yeah, it was a huge loss for the music world and for his fans.
He was such a talented musician and by all accounts a really great guy. And it's just heartbreaking to think about what he could have accomplished if he had been given more time.
Yeah, but even in his short life, he made a huge impact on the metal scene, and his music continues to inspire people all over the world.
Right, and I think his story is a reminder that like life is precious and we should never take it for granted.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a reminder to pursue our passions, to make the most of every moment, and to cherish the people we love.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of different Toms in this deep dive. And we've seen how like the name Tom can encompass a wide range of personalities and achievements. But I think the one thing that all of these Toms have in common is that they've left their mark on the world in some way.
Yeah, I agree. They've all made a difference, whether it's through their art, their athleticism, their activism, or simply by being themselves.
And I think that's something we can all aspire to leave the world a little bit better than we found it.
Absolutely. And I think this deep dive has been a great reminder of that. So thank you for joining us on this journey.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Wow. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. It's amazing to see how many talented and accomplished people share the name Tom.
It really is. And I think it just goes to show that, there's no one-size-fits-all definition of what it means to be successful or famous.
Yeah, like we started with those big Hollywood names like Hanks and Cruz. But then as we went down the list, we found all these other Toms who are making their mark in different ways.
Right. Like take Tom Waits, for example. He's a musician, but he's definitely not your typical pop star.
Yeah, his style is pretty unique. I mean, one of the comments on the list describes him as having distinctive voice and wit and inventiveness.
And he's been super successful, too. I mean, he's won multiple Grammy Awards, and he's even been inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah, it just goes to show that, you don't have to fit into any particular mold to achieve success.
Exactly. And speaking of not fitting into a mold, what about Tom Felton?
Oh, yeah. He's best known for playing Draco Malfoy in the Harry Potter movies.
Right. And it's funny because Malfoy is like the ultimate bad boy.
Yeah.
He's arrogant. He's basically everything you're not supposed to like in a person.
But Felton somehow managed to make him likable, or at least somewhat sympathetic.
Yeah, one of the comments on the list even calls him the perfect Draco Malfoy, which is pretty impressive considering that Malfoy is not exactly a role model.
Right. It just goes to show how a good actor can really bring depth and nuance to even the most unlikable characters.
And then there's Tom Hardy, another actor known for playing some pretty intense characters.
Yeah, he's been in a ton of great movies like Inception, Mad Max Fury Road, The Revenant.
He's definitely got this raw energy that's really captivating.
Yeah.
And he's not afraid to take on challenging roles.
Right. Like in The Revenant, he basically had to survive in the wilderness for months. And he did a lot of his own stunts, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, he's definitely not afraid of a challenge. And I think that's part of what makes him so appealing to audiences.
Yeah, he's like the ultimate tough guy. But he's also got this vulnerability that makes him relatable.
And there's Tom Brady, the quarterback who just seems to defy all the odds.
Yeah, 7 Super Bowl wins. It's just unbelievable.
He's considered by many to be the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
And he's still playing at a high level even though he's in his 40s.
It's really inspiring to see someone achieve that level of success and longevity in such a demanding sport.
Yeah, it's a testament to his dedication and his work ethic. And I think it gives hope to anyone who's ever thought about pursuing their dreams later in life.
So I guess the main takeaway from this deep dive is that there's no one right way to be a Tom.
Right. There's room for all kinds of Toms in the world, from the heartwarming actors to the groundbreaking musicians to the record-breaking athletes.
And I think it's important to celebrate that diversity, to recognize that success can come in many forms.
Absolutely. And I think it's also a reminder that we all have the potential to achieve great things in our own unique ways.
Yeah. So maybe we should all try to be a little more Tom in our own lives.
I think that's a great idea. And thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening.